Thank you everyone for staying with us here on Global Morning. I'm Wiyagmo Fuegbe. This is Global Television. We're here in the nation's capital, Abuja. A lot has happened over the weekend and even into early this morning. So when you look at the papers this morning, they are pretty flooded with stories, big headlines across different issues, very topical and germane issues. One of them is one that has to do with the impacts of the fuel subsidy withdrawal, or if you like, removal, which again is perhaps one of the biggest discussions across the country now. Recall that the organized labor, all right, led by the Nigeria Labour Congress, had met with the federal government on the 5th of this month, and there were discussions around palliative measures to be put in place so the impact of this removal of fuel subsidy can be better mitigated. Also, we've not forgotten how that on the federal government side we had the immediate past Speaker of the House of Representatives, now the current Chief of Staff to President Bola Tinubu, talking about Right Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila, who led discussions at that time. Today is 19th. I recall that one of the highlights of our meeting on the 5th of June was that the federal government and the Labour would meet on the 19th to be able to fashion out specific measures to be put in place to check the effects of fuel subsidy removal. In the middle of all that, Labour, we understand, is also threatening strike on some levels. So the question is, how will today's meeting turn out? What will be the core issues to be deliberated upon? Because the outcome of that meeting, what happens next, particularly from the end of Labour. Labour is not status quo necessarily. It was a bad idea for the federal government to have even considered banishing, or if you like, abolishing fuel subsidy payments. They're only saying that since it naturally comes with consequences or repercussions, for want of a better word, it's only common natural that Nigeria, the government should take up the responsibility of putting in place very critical measures to help cushion the impact of the removal itself. So we are waiting to see how that meeting turns out, and trust Global Television to bring you all of that story. But there's this very pathetic one in Lagos. It's around flooding, right? How that flood had washed off a woman and her daughter. As if that was of a very if you like, a humane man, somebody who was public spirited, decided to help save perhaps the woman or her daughter, or who knows, maybe the intention was even to save both of them, and then that man also got washed away by flood. And there was a tricycle rider, a keke as we call it, a rider who escaped death by the whiskers, even though the flood washed away his tricycle. But life first, isn't it? So that's a sad story. As a matter of fact, we're hearing that there's a possibility at least 8 persons have lost their lives to that flood. But there's a bigger picture to that conversation, because remember that the Nigeria Meteorological Agency, that is NIMET, had actually warned that there will be serious flooding, very, very serious flooding across many cities in this nation. In fact, they specifically mentioned 12, including the Federal Capital Territory where we are. And then you're wondering what efforts are being made now to also ensure that people are evacuated when necessary, and then camps are open for people to find temporary shelter, for people to be able to get access to, say, basic medication where there is need for that, to get all the support, psychosocial support, for example, which is only necessary in cases like this, given that there will be trauma coming with it for many people. So all of those efforts are very critical. Not just at the federal level, state governors must swing into action, must take responsibility. That's what it means to be a governor, at least it's part of it. All right, and then, of course, all of those NGOs and different non-for-profit in cases like this also hope they activate so much of goodwill at this point, and that's first. All right, so we're going to take a quick break at this point so we can bring you big headlines from across our national dailies this morning to stay with us. Welcome to Global Morning here on
Welcome to the AM News.
The death toll from flooding.
Most time our politicians just bring in policies too, for sure.
We have several more stories.
The legislature was carefully crafted to
22.2% inflation rates as of April this year. What does that say about where we are as a country?
I think Nigeria has resorted to being resilient.
The National Assembly is something that must be gotten right.
Before you call a police station, before they even leave, they'll take permission from
I don't think there's really anything on ground to improve.
We struggled as to strike.
The Minister of Education volunteered and said, give me 2 weeks.
It was a lie. The president never gave me any deadline.
I am for everybody, I am for nobody.
No, you're not talking about me.
This one too now in another way.
How are you sure, sir?
Keep quiet. I am in this one in another way. I am for
the only area where Buhari defeats for that statement. Now, only appointment. When you're talking about project, the project spell out first. If you say you to spell out, what does this mean? But if you say appointment, and in the type of appointment, you appoint people you trust.
Be like say the man na everything.
I'm ready to say that whether I did that or did not. You know, I'm when they get the position first.
Why una no come win APC? Why una no win APC?
Get the enemy. Why don't go win Lagos? Why not be about Lagos myself? Why not be Lagos? Now, see, let me tell you.
Would like to turn to the papers now quickly to see big headlines for you. Daily Trust is our first call on the show this morning. Big story that says 4 days to go, over 15,000 Nigerian pilgrims yet to be airlifted. Nakon Ahon activate rescue flights. Tour operators intending pilgrims lament. Sultan declares June 28th Eid al-Kabir. Above, just beneath the nameplate of today's Daily Trust newspaper, Tinubu's Advisory Council recommends sale of refineries, other assets. Nigerian farmers have been victimized. Obasanjo. CBN lifts restriction on domiciliary accounts, allows $10,000 daily limits, withdrawals, right? Then the foot of the Daily Trust newspaper, it says, homeowners cry out as Kano government marks houses for demolition. How Nigeria can leverage tech to solve housing problem. 2 killed, houses, shops burnt in Plateau. Osimhen hits brace as Super Eagles qualify for 2023 finals. Okay, we'll take a look at the Daily Independent now. On the Daily Independent, you have a big story on the front page. But let's begin with the 2 headlines above the nameplate of today's Daily Independent. CBN lifts restriction on domiciliary accounts. PSC OK's new guidelines on deployment of AIG's, CP's, others. The big headline here reads, I was poisoned at PDP Secretariat. Wike opens up, reveals his kidney, liver almost failed. That story actually broke yesterday, and the governor said it happened in 2018. And then he shares his story as to all of the efforts that followed to save his life. Amid economic headwinds, 10 insurers earned 376.121 billion naira GWP. Okay, that's a big story on today's Independent newspaper. All right, on the left corner, front page of Daily Independent, bandits kill monarch, his 4 children, cart away 100 cattle. Arik technically insolvent, founder owes 250 billion naira Amcon. Lagos demolishes 17 massive plazas at Alaba International Market. That story is on page 6 of Daily Independent. Serap urges Akpabio others in Senate to review pensions as ex-governors. The story is on page 7. Okay. And then you have News Direct. News Direct has several stories in the Kubo, but just above the nameplates of News